welcome to Fintan and others from the Irish Dental Association as well. Fintan, I want to start with a quote that we had from the HSE last week when they were before the committee. And in their opening statement, they referenced the DTSS scheme. And it was simply one paragraph, and this is what it said. HSE is aware that some medical card holders have experienced difficulties in assessing treatment. Where this is made known to the HSE, each inquiry and representation is followed up by local community services who seek to assist medical card holders. In your view, is that a gross underestimation of how serious the crisis is?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that the facts speak for themselves. There's been a huge decline in the number of dentists participating in the scheme, and related to that, there's been a huge decline in the number of patients availing of benefit under the scheme. Where a dentist leaves the scheme and a patient presents, the scheme is very clear that the responsibility rests on the HSE to find another dentist. And I know from speaking to HSE officials that in many parts of the country they find it next to impossible to find another dentist because there's been large numbers of dentists have left the scheme. So the consequence of that is either that a patient travels a great distance for treatment, they postpone treatment, they receive no treatment, or in a small number of cases they have to borrow or find money to pay to be treated privately. So there's no doubt when you see that in a normal year that 1 in 3 patients get some benefit from the scheme, and last year 1 in 5 patients were going to visit the dentist. Can I
ask from your perspective, because obviously you've been involved with the association for some time. In your view, is this an unprecedented crisis? So are we talking about a full-blown resourcing crisis here?
The situation has never been as bleak as it is currently. We know from the phone calls we get from members of the public to our office. We know from the dentists participating. We know from calls we've had from politicians, from local radio stations. There has never been a problem of this magnitude or scale in the history of the scheme, and never has there been so quick a decline in the operation of the scheme as it has been.
Just in terms of that decline, then, if I can just hone in on some questions. So we know that there has been a 31% decline in funding from 2015 to 2020. But there was also a substantial decline in dentists that were contracted from 1,847 to 1,279. I think that's the number. So in your view, over the last 7 or 8 years, or whenever we started to see a decline, how many less dentists are there signed up to the contract now are there than we had, say, a number of years ago when we first started to see the decline? So, how stark is that number?
Well, I think, what was remarkable is that in the difficult years after 2009, the number stayed pretty consistent. Number of dentists participating in the scheme stayed. But in the last 5 years in particular, in the last 3 years, there has been a sharp decline. The rate of decrease in the number of dentists has never been greater. Last week you were told that they have done a further audit of the contracts. Our belief is that in fact the figures are actually worse than the official statistics indicate.
Is it possible, Fintan, that there are some what you could describe as inactive contracts? Is that maybe where some of the confusion is?
We know for a fact, I'll give you an example. I was talking to one dentist and he said that in his practice there was, until fairly recently, 5 dentists holding contracts with the medical card scheme. It's now down to 1. But when he went to check the database, which is published on the HSE website, he saw that all 5 were still listed as being active. So we well believe that the system, the official statistics are grossly overstated. In fact, my best guess is that there are actually less than 1,000 dentists currently participating in the scheme.
Well, I think, Cahill, what we need to get to is that exact figure, because we were quoted a much smaller figure from the department and the HSE when they were before us last week. So I do think we need an accurate figure from the department and the HSE in relation to how many dentists are currently signed up to the contract, and then how many are active or inactive. I think that would be important information to have. But just to move on to the treatment side of it, because we have a shortfall in funding, we have dentists who are leaving in unprecedented numbers, we have medical card holders who, because of that, maybe are not getting access to the service that they need, and there isn't a pathway to more serious treatment, as we know as well. So looking at what treatment is available from 2010 onwards to what was available prior to that, it strikes me, and I just want to get your opinion on this, that we've almost abandoned prevention. And we're saying that when it comes to scale and polish, when it comes to extended gum cleaning, it's all suspended. When it comes to root canal treatment or dentures or denture repairs, it's all in emergency circumstances only. And unlimited numbers of extractions, which to me doesn't make any sense. So what we're saying to medical card holders is we're not going to put the preventative resources in place and give you an opportunity to go to a dentist to prevent it getting to a point where you need an extraction. But if you get to that point, we'll happily remove the tooth, which is hardly good oral health. So from your perspective, am I right in saying that? And is that something that you have highlighted yourselves with the
I'll ask Dr. Anne O'Neill to comment on it, but it has certainly been a comment that we have heard from dentists over the years, is that the changes made in 2009 and 2010 sat very uncomfortably with many dentists for the very reason that you have outlined there. People are now going to be put off going to the dentist if they feel that there's no limit on the amount of extractions, but there are limits on the number of fillings, to use that basic example. So I might, Anne...
just before you bring your colleague in, I just want to reinforce some of what I've said with data that I got back from parliamentary questions in relation to orthodontic and dental waiting times in the public system, because that's also a very big issue. So children with special needs, for example, there was 104 children with special needs waiting for more than a year. In terms of children waiting for dental extractions under general anaesthetic, which I'm assuming is an emergency, there's 1,500 on the waiting list, and hundreds of those are waiting longer than a year. In some cases, 2 years. And then when you move to the orthodontist wait times, which is really staggering, 15,313 people on orthodontist wait times. 2,439 are waiting more than 4 years. And if you look at some of the regional disparities, the southeast, it would seem, is the hardest hit area. So again, while your colleague is coming in as well, is that adding to the problem? Where not only now do we have a problem with a drop in funding, dentists that are not are dropping off the contract, not providing the service anyway that should be provided in terms of prevention, waiting until it gets very serious, and then if somebody needs orthodontic treatment, well then you're on a long waiting list, anywhere from 1 to 4 years or longer. So I just add those statistics in terms of the information I've got from PQs. Does that tally with your own analysis of how difficult it is to have that pathway to more urgent treatment, I suppose?
It does, and what we are seeing is that there are now new waiting lists. So it's well recognised that there have been orthodontic waiting lists of unacceptable levels for many years. But what we're now seeing is that there are waiting lists emerging for care for children, children who require treatment under general anaesthetic. The school screening programme is effectively suspended or abandoned in many parts of the country. And that's because the public dental service is now, it has been historically understaffed. Public dental surgeons, and Dr. Anne O'Neill is one of them, many of them were redeployed over the past 12 months to work with testing and tracing. So what you're going to see is, in fact, these new waiting lists grow exceptionally and exponentially longer because the public dental surgeons aren't available to see both children and special care patients.
Fintan, I've only, apologies, there's a very short time left, and I just want to make one last comment before your colleague comes in. There's also going to be, in the health services generally, a need for a lot of catch-up care, as we know, because a lot of non-essential care was paused. And obviously, in dental and orthodontic services in the public system, there was a pause for a significant number of months. So the figures from March to the end of May for 2019 was 45,924 appointments. For the same figures in 2020, same date in 2020, was down to 3,161. That's huge. And again, I would imagine that's carried over as well into 2021, into this year. So while my time is short, and I know one of your colleagues came in, I wouldn't mind if you were able to, if it's not yourself, your colleague, address that point as well. So with all the other problems that we've just identified, we now have all of this catch-up care that will now need to be done as well.
Does someone want to briefly reply to those questions?
I'll take up the questions that Deputy Cullinan has raised. The easiest way to actually look at these is actually to look at mapping the patient journey. And while I can appreciate that the numbers of practitioners within the DTS is one of the trends to look at, the second trend to look at is actually the number of active and the amount of resources that are available in all of the geographical areas. Because while somebody may have a contract, we have got staff who have not yet been able to resume services because of COVID, because there are additional difficulties now with pregnant women past certain ages actually participating in care. And we have got people who are more mindful of their own general health because of the impact of COVID. But the problems with the DTS are not COVID, they're not of COVID's origin, but I think COVID could be really called the nail in the coffin. If you look at the journey that a patient now takes, if you talk about the child patient, because you've actually referenced the need for general anaesthetic care, unfortunately, general anaesthetic care requires hospital facilities. So you're automatically in competition for access to the same resources that provide treatment to scoliosis patients or cardiac care. Those patients are coming from the underfunded child service, and they hit the DTS service at the age of 16. They're not able to access the number of fillings that will allow them to reach what a dentist would consider to be a state of health. So while the preference, of course, would be not having a need for fillings, if they can't actually access the number of fillings required to bring them to a stable oral health status, then they will end up losing those teeth earlier than would be desirable. One of the differences between our current policy and the previous policy, which was the Dental Health Action Plan, was it set targets for health for people, whereas the new policy talks about access to care, which of course is an issue. But without having both in the same concept, then you're going to find that it's going to be very difficult to ensure that there's resourcing there for patients to be able to get the level of care they need. With regards to the numbers, the appointment numbers that you're talking about in COVID, yes, they would all fit into the general understanding we have of the resource difficulties that the entire system is in at the moment. There's no doubt about it, orthodontic waiting lists historically have always been long. Because the treatment plans are long, they tend to take batches of patients from the waiting list from time to time, and it's a 2-year treatment plan. But I think you'll find that more patients are interested in having orthodontic treatment than ever before, so that they are more interested in being put on the waiting list. They will wait for their treatment time because it is an expensive treatment. And it's not, the orthodontic waiting list is not limited to those with or without resources. It is children of clinical need, so that it covers all of our child population. The difficulty that COVID has put on us is actually on top of an already under-resourced system. So we're at crisis point with all of the entire range, but in particular, our issue with the DTS is that the activity required to start mediating the problems that exist rests with the department.
Thank you.